Oh, looks like I'm live. Cool. Just give me a second before I actually start. Let's mute that. All right. So let's start where we stopped the other day. I did a bit of bug fixing yesterday. There was an issue where I couldn't really create multiple rigs at the same time. So here I just created that finger rig we built. And if I try to create a second one, this used to be completely broken, but now it does work. I have those two rigs that each control their joints, and that works just fine. The names are still not really solved properly. As you can see, like these doubled, like these names at the root are the same for both rigs. So yeah, that's a problem I'll solve in the future. I also did something with a root rig, which is a very simple component. If I go inside of it, it doesn't have much. It has a transform, which is the top group of the rig. Then these three groups over here, which are these three ones, just to organize things a bit. Then it has a root joint and a root control. So if I just hide the rest, that control is just driving that joint, and that's about it. And then it outputs references to everything, which can then be used inside of each rig. So that rig finger, let's just use the one that's a bit cleaner, forwards the parent control reference to the rig FK, which has some controls in it. So it parents the first control under whatever is connected to the parent control up the chain. So if I connect the root control to the parent control here, you'll see, let me just unhide that first one and maybe like move everything over there. Let me dock that instead of, okay. So if I do create that connection between the rig root, the root control of that, to the parent control, you're going to see that the control here just got parented to the root control. So now if I move that, the controls follow along, and okay, so that setup is not really done properly, because I'm just using local matrices to drive the current, but I actually need to use the world matrix. Okie doke. And I can do that for the rest of things. So the root joint is used as the parent joint, which parents this joint under that root joint. So now everything should move, but it's still not exactly like it should be. Then the guides group is just used to parent that guides group under there. So if you ignore, let's just delete that one, and deleting also works now. It does. Maya kind of freaks out. These joints don't exist. They show in the viewport for some reason. I haven't found a way to get rid of those. So yeah. But yeah, it did, like, just making these connections parented everything properly inside of the rig, so we can have a clean hierarchy with just like a skeleton group with all the joints under there, and all the controls of the rig will be over there, and then the guides, which is something that will be able to delete down the road. When you publish the rig, you'll want to delete that guides group, because it doesn't really make sense to have that in the animation rig. Alright, so what I want to try to do today is I think I am going to recreate that rig IK, so I'll just create it. That's the rig that's the slowest to create, because it's the more nodes there are in a node, the longer the slower it takes to create it. Yeah, just because the editor is pretty slow to just instantiate all the nodes, all the attributes, and yeah, all that. So what I want to do is kind of recreate that. So yesterday we extracted that part out into a separate REST solver 2bone. So we've extracted that part out, and now we want to basically make this graph into its own graph. I'm trying to think of whether or not we want the controls to be in that. And we'll want to output that to some joints. So if I delete that, will it delete? Yes. And again, it left these joints over here. So yeah, okay. So let's rename that rig finger to rig arm and save it. Now I have a rig arm over here. It might fail to create. I have a bug in the... That's not what I want to show. In the way it saves things to disk. So I want to show you that window. The rig arm. Some joints have a unique identifier as their type, and I'm not sure where it comes from. Yeah, I don't know. But I know I'll need to replace the type. I can use my keyboard. Okay. So let's just search for everything that's a word followed by a dash. And that just fixing these two things should make it possible to create that arm rig. Yep. Okay. So let's just go for a clean scene because I'm annoyed by these joints. Let's run that again and create that rig arm. So inside of that setup, what we want is we have that REST solver, we have that rig fk, and then we have everything that outputs to the joints. What we'll do is just over here, we'll make the setup that creates the rig IK. And I already have one solver for the IK. That's the 2bone IK 2D node, which takes it just solves the 2D triangle. So if we go on the side view, it's the front view, sorry. Now start Epic Pen. What this does, I'm not sure where Epic, okay. Let's just put that over here. What this does, so this node over here, it's going to solve 2 angles for me. Actually, let's go back. I'll do a demo of what it does with the one that actually works right now before I redo it. So let's hide these. And let's go to the top view now. So when I move that, just in a 2D space, I don't really care about moving things in 3D with the pole vector, because that's a second problem. When you build an IK solver, you want to solve 2 problems. The first one is the solving the angles for the first joint. So we have that triangle, right, that goes from that point, and that point. We know the length of that bone, and consequently we know the max length of that side, right? It can be either from something from 0 to the length of the 2 bones over here. So we have the side A, B, and this is C. C can be of length between 0 and A plus B. So then what we want to solve whenever we move that control is simply the angle, the rotation of that first joint, and then the rotation of that second joint. But the rotation we actually want to solve isn't the one in the triangle, right? It's the rotation that the joint will have. So if a joint doesn't have any kind of rotation, so it's going to be straight like that. And what we want to do is solve the angle that goes. So we have that. Yeah, we want to solve that angle over here. So the law of cosine, I think, is what we use to solve these angles. We'll find that angle over here, and then we just need to do like 180 minus that angle that we'll solve. So we'll get alpha prime from that. So that's what this this two-bone IK thing does. I'm not going to delve into the actual math that it does. The way I'm solving this is in an expression. So if I go in the expression editor and expression by name, I'll have a bunch of them. But yeah, it takes as inputs the position of the base control. So this one, and I'm in the control, right? It takes the position of that base control and that end control, and I'm going to delete all my drawings. So these are these 2 vectors over here. These are vector 3, and then it takes the length of those 2 bones as inputs. And the expression is fairly simple. So that's just the inputs. This computes the vectors, I think, from the handle to the base handle. So this is the base, this is the handle, and I might rename those. So that's the first vector that goes that way. The chain length is just the length of A and B added together. the effector vector length just takes, like I said, either the length, the smallest value between a, that's b, a plus b, or the length of that vector over here. It just takes, yeah, the smallest value between these two vectors, values, sorry. Then the effector position is going to be used for the actually solving the triangle. So what I call the effector, and it might not be the actual right name, is the point that is at the end of that new vector. So we just computed like a distance, and then we create a vector that goes from the base to and points to that point. So it goes from sorry, let's just move that a bit out of the way. Remove some of that stuff. So if I have that moved out, right, the control can go further than the length of the arm. But in order to get that max position, we get that distance that we just computed just before. So then to get the position of the effector, which can be either the position of the control or that point right here where the arm stops. So we just get the vector that goes from the handle point to the control, and we just multiply the unit vector that goes in that direction by the length we just computed before. So that's what this line over here does. This, as you can see, it takes the unit vector of the base to handle vector and then multiplies it by the length we computed before. Then I'm not actually sure what that is. It might just be the same value because it just recomputes the... Yeah, I think these two variables are the same. And I'll just open that in VS Code. Which one do you have? Okay. So if I look for that, yeah, it's just used over here. And then this one gets used all over the place. So I'll just rename that to that. And then we can delete that line. And that should still work. So I said renaming this like that and removing that and clicking edit. Invalid expression after edit. This is a float. You just do that. Okay. Ah, what's wrong? I literally just renamed. Do I get a more... Okay, yeah, okay. So just having that name twice breaks it. And then, yeah, I need to replace that over here and then it works. Okay, good. So the IK should still work exactly the same. Yep. So that cleaned it up a bit. Now I'm not going to go over what these lines do because that's I'm pretty sure the law of cosine, which is some fairly basic trigonometry. Have you done any profiling on the expressions? No, I haven't. I feel like small expressions like that are not too too intensive. I haven't done any kind of profiling. I'm just like prototyping so far and just seeing where I can take this. I would like to avoid using any kind of anything that clutters the outliner. So the Maya's default IK, I need to create more joints than I would want. It has the IK handle and the effector and that kind of stuff that I don't want really in the outliner. So I'm just trying things out like that, and I would like to stick to some stuff that's still just uses vanilla Maya stuff. So I don't really want to make my own IK node and that kind of stuff, because that makes it a bit of a pain to share rigs. Yep. So yeah, these two blocks of codes just make solve the two angles I was talking about earlier. If you want to dive a bit more into that, look for what the law of cosine is, and that's just that. And then I output those two angles out to these attributes. So if I have a look at what this looks like in the node editor, which is spawned over here, it's just an input node and an expression node that has a bunch of inputs that are a bit nonsense, and then outputs as well. So these two input and output nodes are just used to make more sense of what's fed in and out of the expression node. My biggest complaint about NMG is that it uses a lot of custom nodes, so the rigs aren't really transportable. Yeah, exactly. I definitely agree with that. Though it does make it much more user-friendly to work with as a rigger. But yeah, it's just annoying to share. And that's something that I wish Bifrost would have solved, but it's still a pain to share Bifrost rigs. I wish you could just have a Maya file that contains all the Bifrost node definition and that kind of stuff inside of the Maya file, and then the graph would just get rebuilt on when you open the file. But that's not really how it works, and Bifrost is, as far as I know, pretty slow anyway. So yep. So yeah, I have that expression node. I'm just going to fix how that expression actually gets created. So these few lines I changed, which are going to be in there. So I have like that big expression template that has some parts that get replaced by some attributes. So these will be replaced by the nodes that input and output nodes. So when you see a 0 is the input node, and I have pre-fed the attribute names, and then when you see a 1 over here, it's going to be the output node. So let's just rename this. Oops. Not really use my keyboard today. And then is the interrupt between the DG and Bifrost is really slow. Yeah. I haven't really tested Bifrost all that much. I did a bit when it came out. It looked very interesting, but yeah, if it's slow, then I have no use for it. So now that I fixed this, I should be able to create that two-bone IK2D again, and so this is the two-bone IK2D expression 2, and then if I go in the expression editor, two-bone IK2D expression 2. Yeah, I removed that. And you can see with the template stuff that I have, that the name of the nodes got fed in properly, and then that got connected for me automatically. So that's a pretty nice way to work with expressions, to just template them and then feed them to something that will be consistent as input and output. And yeah. So now that we have that node, I'll just delete both instances, and I don't know where I am. Yeah, okay. So if I create that, what I need is two things to start with. A bunch of controls, so I need two controls for now, which are there. Cool. So I need the base and the handle to be fed into that, and I'll need those to be the world no, that's matrix inverse. I need that to be that's in the same node again. I need that to be from the world matrix, so I'll take those, and let's call that the IK base con and IK or yeah, let's stick with end, and I'll rename that handle later. So I have that, and then I need to get the length of the bones, which I'm going to update in that 2-bone rest solver, because that's I think, where it makes sense to keep that information, because anything other than that might change the length of the chain. Well, I wouldn't want that. So let's so I want the length of basically these two vectors over here. I have a node that computes the magnitude, so vector length. This one is also an expression node because Maya doesn't really have anything to compute the length of a vector. Is it possible to expose different inputs to a node? For instance, if I wanted to change the visibility of a control. Yep, I can do that. So basically, if I go on a control, for example, it's split in two different files. So you have the actual definition of what the Orodruin node is, which has a bunch of ports. That's the attributes. You could add as many ports as you wanted. So it has the translate, the rotate, and all these have nested ports under them for the individual rotation axes. So it has the scale, the rest matrix, and a bunch other things. And then in the class that builds the actual Maya representation of that node, I have two things. The first one is what node gets created. So for a control, I'll just create a circle, and that's it. Yep. And then there's a dictionary that's, in this case, way overkill. I don't actually need to define anything that has the same name on both sides. But for example, the world matrix here, on my editor is named world matrix, and on my side it's named world matrix. It's the first index of the world matrix attribute. And I could add a visibility here. And again, if it has the same name on both sides, I don't actually need to define it. And then just add I'll just duplicate that. add a visibility attribute. This is a definition, that's an output, and that's a boolean. So now if I create a new control, it has that visibility, and that's actually not an output, that's an input. So if I create it again, it has that visibility, and if I were to connect something that I think I can connect something with I'll just, oh, you don't even need to restart my, no, because this isn't an actual like Python repository. You can see that I have no init.py here. So every time it loads a node, it searches for the definition of it, and it just loads whatever's on disk at that time. So I could even make changes to the Python file. I don't need to reload anything. It just loads whatever's on disk at the time. So I could, let's just take, I don't know, that control and just take its, that's not the one I want. Ooh. Okay, that knows it's technically gone, but it's still visible in here. So if I decompose the world matrix and just take its translate x as the visibility, and you can see the crash, no, the can't find the word, but the gradient of the connection, and it hid that control. So if I move the control 2, the control 1 should get visible at some point. Yep. So yeah, I can just add more stuff like that. And I think I've made a mess of that graph now. So I don't even know where I am in the rest solver to bone. Yeah, so let's just delete those, and hopefully they'll delete properly. And that will just go away when I don't actually know why it stays there, because I think it doesn't even exist in Qt anymore, because I can't select or deselect it. And it goes depending on the zoom level. But yeah, I need the length of these two vectors right here, and then just output them. So boom, a length, that's an output, and that's a float. And then boom, b length, again output and float. So if I go there, I can plug those in. And now I need to just save that node again. And plug these out. So now if I were to, I'll just delete that rig IK, and hopefully it deletes cleanly. IK base are the ones I want. So the rest matrix of the IK base is going to be the start matrix, and the rest matrix of this one is going to be this. And I still have that issue with the because that's local matrices. Yeah, I won't use those, at least for now. I might need to update that rest solver to Ubuntu output world matrices as well. What I want to do, reset that. And reset that. So, don't crash. Okay. Now I want to basically use these angles and just double check that this actually works. So I have these joints right here. Should I use these or? Trying to think if I want to mess that up or just start fresh. Yeah, I think I'll just start fresh. Do I want to do that though? No, I'll use these. I'll just disconnect the whatever's fed into them. So all that. Yeah. So the angle of the joints, if I reset their offset parent metrics, let's just reset the rotation of them and not the translation. And if I like to use the axis angle to compose rotations. So I have the somewhere quaternion from axis angle. And I'll just feed the angle over here. And I know I want to rotate around the z-axis right here. So I'll set the angle of the axis angle node to the z-axis. And it might be negative z, because I've got my joints z-axis pointing back. Might not be, we'll see. So that creates a quaternion for me of that angle. I'll do the same for that and set that again to negative z. And compose a matrix. Or maybe do I have quaternion to Euler? Just to try, I'll convert that to Euler rotations. And yeah, okay. I was confused as to why it wasn't moving, but okay. And convert that to Euler and then fit that into the rotation. And I think that's what this is working, right? Cool. So it's working now. The problem being that well, it just works in 2D, right? If I can't really, if I move that on the side, then it just won't follow because I'm just solving that inside of a 2D plane. And I can't really, if I were to want to, I can't really do that. Can I rotate the joints like you would with a pole vector? I can't do that right now. So the way I do that on top of that setup, and I think I lost the editor, no, it's there. It's just using a name constraint. that gets added on top of these angles that I solve. So I'll pop that trusty aim node again. I pretty much only want to aim that first joint to the and align it to that vector that's between these two controls. So I'll make a vector out of those two. So subtract things like that. And it crashed. Cool. Yeah. I have a crash. That kind of happens a lot. That's happening with connections like that. I don't actually know what's happening. I think it's a Qt thing, more of a Maya crash. But yeah, let's go at it again. And I might just start and do the IK stuff on its own. Yeah, I'll do that. So I need 3 joints parented to each other. That way I'm not messing too much with the other setup. I need that rest solver to bone, which I did save with these attributes, so I haven't lost that work. I need let's do 3 controls. That's the IK phase control. That's the IK PV for pole vector control. And that's the IK end control. I know I'll need the Kubun IK, and you can see an error right here. It's because these vectors here are both set to 0, so the IK, it kind of ends up dividing something by 0 because the length of the arm is just 0 over here. So for that I need to get the world position of the controls. So that's the base, that's the, not the right. Cool. What happens if I just do that? Do I get, yeah, the joints get placed properly. Right. So I can output the length of that, and then if I move that out, nothing's moving because I don't have that plugged onto the... I wonder if I should just multiply the rotation to what's on the rest matrix, or if I should just drive the rotation of the joints. I don't know. I wanted to do the aim stuff. Let's start with that and figure things out later. So I'm going to aim that first joint straight at the this control, so I need a vector that goes between the two with the vector subtract. Let's just do that, and that's my aim vector. The up vector is going to be the same up axis right here. Actually, that's pretty cool. I can reuse whatever is going to be fed to that. I'm just going to set the values manually for now, but I can use the same aim axis and up axis as this node will use. So if I select the node, set its aim axis to that, and then I think I use the -1 on Z as the up axis. So this is going to create a name vector, and the up vector should be the normal of the plane. And that's where I need to use the pole vector. So to compute the normal of the plane, instead of computing the plane based on these guides, like I was doing for the rest solver, I need to compute the plane that's made by these three controls. So if I have my pole vector placed over here, and it's likely going to be more out, I want to compute the plane between these three controls right here. So in order to get that, I'll need, again, more vectors and a matrix decompose like so. So I already have that vector, so I'm going to leverage the fact that I have that already and just compute maybe this vector right here. So from the pole vector like that, I'll name that base BV vec, and that's base and vec. And then I want the cross product between the two, which is that node, and just take these two. I want to normalize the output. I don't actually need to do that with the aim node. I could just feed something in it, and it just, I think it normalizes things internally. But I want to use that as the up vector. And now if I just delete that connection and replace that, so it jumped back because that rotation doesn't include the IK, like it aims that joint straight at this, but it does aim it like I want. I can probably use the pole vector to rotate things around, and yeah, so I need to, on top of that, use the world matrix of the base control as the base matrix of that aim node, which is a pretty nice thing because you don't need to then multiply matrices together. You can just fit that in. So now if I use that, the first control moves, the first joint moves with the control and aims towards that right here. So let me dock that back in. Cool, cool, cool. Now I want to add the rotation I get out of that like Tubun IK 2D solver, the one that solves the actual IK triangle. I want to add the angle A on top of whatever comes out of that. So I'll decompose that matrix, and I'll do that same thing I did earlier with that axis angle thing, and that's angle of rotation here is going to be the exact same as the up axis over here. So I'm going to, again, be able to reuse that value everywhere. But so far, I'm just going to do -1. And that gives me a quaternion. So I want to, I think, multiply those two quaternions together. Quaternion multiply. I think the order matters, but I will figure things out. And then recompose the matrix back. So I still want the translation of the first one, but now I want that quaternion from that multiplication. If I plug that in, yes. So now, if I use that control, well, first of all, the rest position is the right one, and then the rotation of the joint does what we want it to do. So we just need to update the rotation of that one, which is, I wonder if it's just doing the same thing on top of that rest position, or if it's more than that. How difficult would you recommend putting the entire setup into a single, or I'm not sure what you mean. By the end, I'm definitely going to have like group those nodes together into one single IK node, or like rig IK, and then I don't know if I have, no, I'm at the root of the graph, and then like group that rig IK node that I've just made into a more complex ARM node that has the FK, the IK, like another node that's dedicated to blending between the two chains. But yeah, right now I won't do it because I don't want to get out of that root graph for now because it's a bit still finicky. But I could just hit Control G and like just group these nodes together, and I'll do that once I'm happy with the setup. I don't know if that answers your question. But yeah, so let's just decompose the mid matrix. The rest matrix, I think I want. And I want to, I think, replace the quaternion I get out of that with the quaternion I'll get from this. So this is going to be a bit of a mess. So just compose node matrix compose, use that translation, I think, and then use that and fit that in there. Nope. Oh yeah, because I need to set that to -1. So I think now I've got an IK setup that works, and then we have that Pole vector that actually works as well. Now whether or not that works with the rest position, I don't think it does. So just doing that, yep. So we need to have those controls follow the rest position of what we saw out here. So just the start matrix, at least for now, is going to So what do I need to do exactly? I need to output world matrices from that. That's for sure. So I have the start matrix, mid matrix, inverse matrices, and I need the world matrices out of them as well. So I want outputs start world matrix, and that's a matrix for mid world matrix, output matrix 4, and then and world matrix, output matrix. So if I go in that, these matrices are pretty much, the start matrix is the same as this one. That input node position never gets saved. That's a bit annoying. And this is the second, the mid matrix, and I think this is, yeah, the end matrix. So I have these world matrices that I'll use instead. I'll just use these for now, even though I don't really want those to be in world space. I might actually make a different setup. Because I'm not happy with the rotations of the controls. I want those to stay in, keep the world orientation. I might just either just use the translation or make a different node that solves the IK positions, or should I just have that as part of that node? Because I don't want that one to become too big, but at the same time I'm already solving most of the things that I would do twice. I'll just make that as part of this node for now. So what do I want to do? I have my world matrices which I can still output, that's fine. Oops, I want so basically what all these matrices are is the matrices for the FK setup. So that's the joints and the FK controls. And then I want some other matrices. So that's the IK start world matrix, and those names are starting to be a bit long. And that's a matrix 4. That still fits in. That's the IK PV world matrix. That's an output, that's a matrix 4, and then that's the IK and world matrix. Output matrix 4. So what are these? These are for at least the first and last, These are the same matrices as these, but just using the translation. Maya has a node that the pick matrix node, which is pretty nice, that I don't have in my editor, so I'm going to make a node for that. So the node I want to use is the pick matrix. It takes an input matrix, and then you have a bunch of booleans, or whether or not you want the translate, the rotate, and that kind of stuff, and then it outputs another matrix. So instead of just like decomposing the matrix and composing it again, I'm just going to use that single node. So I need to make an Orodruin node for that. So, well, we can start by just creating a group node here. Let's call it matrix. What's the name? So matrix pick. Let's add input, which is an input, a matrix 4. Let's add an output, which is an output, a matrix 4, and then use translate. That's an input, that's a boolean. Use rotate, that's an input, that's a boolean. Use scale, that's an input and a boolean as well. And then use share, because why not? It's an input and that's a boolean. So now I have that node. It doesn't do anything in Maya. You can see that it has just a matrix in and a matrix out node, but I'm going to just save it. And now if I go inside of VS Code, I'm going to just get rid of that, and I'll just add those back if I do need to update the visibility. But I have that matrix pick JSON file, which contains what I need it to contain. This I know is going to need to change to that, and I need to create a Python file that maps this Orodruin node to the Maya node. So I am going to maybe duplicate that because it's a simple node, and that's matrix pick. The name of the Python files need to be exactly the same name as the JSON files, and then the name of the class that's inside of it also needs to be exactly the same. So matrix pick. I want to create a pick matrix node, and I don't need to do anything more than that, I think. And then I need to map the input of Orodruin to the input matrix of Maya, and output matrix. And I think that's that node created properly. So if I create it now, I should have a matrix pick over here. Cool. So it created the node. You can see that it didn't create those attributes, those like network nodes here, because when I create a custom node, it does have those two variables that define the input and output node, but I basically set those two to be the same node that I create over here. So instead of creating two network nodes, I just create one node and set the input and output nodes of that Orodruin node to be the same Maya node. So then it finds the output matrix, and so all the input attributes and the output attributes, it just finds them on the same node. So that's good. I can start using that in the network now. I can delete that. So what did I want to do again? I want to get this start aim and just use the translation for it and output that as the IK start world matrix. Do the same for, I think it's this one, and use that as the IK end world matrix. Let's just make sure that this works for now, because the pole vector is going to be a bit more complex. So I want the start like that, and I plug that in the wrong. So IK start in the start and IK end in the end. So did the orientation, yeah, so now, maybe not, okay. Oh, because I forgot to set that one to not use any of those. So now that control is using the world orientation. And now I don't actually remember how to do that, and I don't know if Maya has the operations that I need. But basically I want that pole vector to have to be still always be on that plane that's defined by these three guides, but have to be like pushed by a vector based on that position right here, but be pushed out by some value. And I need to get that vector that goes out like that. So how do I get that vector? I think there's a bunch of ways. I think what you can, one way is to use like a projection of that's not a very straight line. So if I get a projection of that first vector onto that vector, that's going to give me like this vector right here, right? And then I can get a vector from there to there, and then just add that to the position of that point. That's one way of doing that. I don't know if Maya has anything in vanilla Maya to project vectors like that. So I think another way of doing that is using another cross project, because I have, I'm going to find, I don't know if that angle is going to work well, but I have this first vector, this vector, and then I have like the plane normal vector. And I wonder if I do a cross product of maybe these two vectors. If I get a cross product of that one and that one, it should give me a vector that goes that way. Yeah, that should work. And then just get the, like, normalize that vector and multiply it by a float, so that I can modify the distance of the pole vector from that position. That should work. Let's confirm that. So I have, where am I? So I need to go inside of there. I have these A and B vector. And I need, like, so that's this bone and this bone, and I need a vector that goes over there. So I need a vector between the end and the start. So vector subtract, where is that? What? I don't know where that that thing went. Do I still have that vector subtract? It does exist over here. 9. If I export maybe that node again, does it update? Oh. Okay. Yeah, it's not in there. Okay. I wonder if I can hack things and do like vector subtract and just export it. I want to date this. Did it change the file? Did. So vector subtract. Yep, makes sense, makes sense. Yep, I want that to be that. Then the rest should be pretty much the same. But why is it not showing up there? I should be able to. I don't want to restart the editor because then I'm losing kind of all the work I'm doing right now. Wouldn't be ideal. And I've been streaming for like an hour and 15 minutes. I do want to get that to work though. Yeah, I might be able to refresh that widget from the API because I have a function for that. I just need to kind of dig in. So the node list model is instantiated as part of the window, which I have right here. So cool. So window dot node list model dot refresh. What's the name of the function? Refresh nodes list. Window object has no attribute. What? Okay, yeah, because I don't have the right object in my hands. So the window of Maya. What kind of object is it? That's a Orodruin Maya window. It has a Orodruin edit. But it's not accessible. That sucks. Right. Let's delete that. Let's first of all, before I make everything crash, let's save that node. Rest2bone solver, and let's maybe group all that. And that didn't work. Okie doke. Cool. That's annoying. Kind of didn't want to stop there. But at the same time, I kind of don't really feel like... And I got my vector subtract node again now. Can I maybe start with that rig.ik node that I had earlier? Because it's pretty much the same setup for the most part. Tube.ik from axis angle multiplied by the old rest solver thing. Yeah, I think that's going to be a bit too much work for tonight. I wish I could have gone further than that, but I'm starting to be a bit hungry, and it is only 6 p.m. Oh. Yeah, I'm going to stop for today anyway. And I might stream again during the week and finish that, or I might finish that off stream because I kind of wanted to work right now. But anyway, thanks for everyone who tuned in, and hopefully that was somewhat instructive. And yeah, I'll do more of those, I think, over the next few weeks. Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate that. It's really nice to see this coming together. It's still very buggy so far, but this kind of prototyping helps me figure out all the bugs that are in there, and I'm going to fix those off stream. But anyway, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.